All right, welcome to the Buckeye Podcast, episode 17. It's been a little minute since I've been on here. A lot going on. Just got a few things I want to cover before we start rolling into deer season here in a little over a week. So the first thing I was going to address was a few updates on the bow, since that's what I had covered last time. Kind of said there were a few things left to decide and kind of figure out. The first thing being the nocks. I ended up switching to nocturnal lighted nocks, um, and just being primarily whitetail hunter, and the fact that where I hunt most of the time, deer coming out right before dark. That arrow is a telltale sign of your shot, and uh, can really give you a lot of information as to how to address tracking a deer. I guess you could say. So, anyways, yeah, switched to those. My stock nocks in the arrow were 9 grains, and these are advertised at like 20 to 25. So, on the high end, we'll just say adding 16 grains to the back of the arrow. So, um, what I've learned, like adding that onto the front of the arrow, you probably wouldn't even really notice that much of a difference. But putting that in, I mean, even as small of a mass addition as that is, it's completely different on the back of the arrow. So adding those, we'll say 16 grains, took me from a number 16 sight tape to a 12. And I haven't really looked fully, but I would guess that I ended up losing about 15 yards off my sight tape in total distance. Um, so yeah, I mean, some of that was from the nocks, and then the other thing I found out, like once my bow kind of got broken in, I was having some issues where I kept hitting low, and actually ended up messaging Aaron Snyder on Instagram, just kind of asking him like what's going on, because everything was good, and he said it's probably just the string stretching, all the wax and everything seating, from it getting shot. I'd probably put 1,000 arrows through it or so at that point, so to be expected, I guess. And haven't really had any issues, since after adding the lighted nocks and getting that sight tape set up, I haven't had any more issues with stuff moving. So that's been several weeks now. So that changed my total arrow weight to about 487.6 grains. I've kind of been watching like some of the Ranch Fairy stuff, and you know, that guy's, I don't know why, but kind of controversial. Everything he says is pretty much proven by science. So, take it for what it's worth. He would want me to be shooting a little bit heavier of an arrow, but it is what it is. I know another thing too that probably isn't that great about my arrow is the FOC. I meant to calculate it, but forgot to. So I know it's probably pretty low FOC, just because I'm shooting the stock inserts and only 100 grain mechanical sever head. So yeah, but I listen to a lot of tournament archers and stuff like that. Tim Gillingham, Levi Morgan. A lot of the big name guys really aren't all that concerned with arrow weight and high FOC. So and they kill a lot of stuff and make really good shots on animals. So maybe their setup's a little more forgiving. I don't really know. Moving forward, and we'll test it this season, and if I have an issue, then we'll change it. But until then, I'm just gonna roll with it because it's shooting good right now. So, but yeah, mentioning the sever broadheads, I said in the last podcast that I was going to update on that. So, they're shooting great. I started off, I bought like 7 or 8 of the 2.0 titaniums. They shot great, whatever. But I wanted to test their 1.5 titanium as well. So I bought, about the same amount of those. And both those broadheads shot identical to each other, and that being that they flew pretty much just like field points. The only thing I noticed was if there was an error in my shot technique, that they weren't as forgiving as field points. So if I yanked it a little bit to the right, it was going a lot further to the right than it would have if I were just shooting the field point. But in comparison of flight, like 1.5 to 2.0, they fly pretty much identical. And I shot those out to like 70 yards. So further than I'll ever probably be shooting with them. So I was super impressed with those. I'm super happy about that because it's kind of irritating. Like I don't want to shoot broadheads that, you know, every time I want to go out and shoot. So having something that flies, you know, I can have the same tune in my bow and all that for broadheads versus field points. So yeah, super stoked about that. That makes life a whole lot easier. Yeah, one of the reasons I don't want to be shooting broadheads all the time is because I bought a cheap like blackout 6-side target from Bass Pro, and you know I was pretty surprised with it. It was actually a pretty good target. Stopped the arrows pretty well. They pulled out super easy. You know, just there's a couple of things you're looking for in a target. The one downside was, you know, even though those in practice mode, those severs are shaped pretty much just like a field point, it just tore the crap out of that target. I mean, I've never seen a target torn up so bad. Like I've almost cut it in half. Is how much damage it does to the inside of the target. So that is the one downside. But you know, it's cheap, or whatever, and I've put a bunch of arrows through it, so I can't really complain. I'm definitely going to buy something different next time, just because I'd like something to last a little bit longer. But you know, if you're on a tight budget or whatever, and most people aren't shooting broadheads that often. It's usually just kind of a before the season thing, make sure everything's flying good. Then you know, I'd recommend it if you're on a tight budget, but otherwise, I'm probably gonna be looking for something different. And additionally, speaking of blackout products, I'd mentioned I'd switched to the blackout handheld thumb button release last time. So yeah, it's been night and day difference going to that versus my old index release. It's got 3 different like tension settings on it for like how much pull you have on the trigger. So I played around with that, and you know, I spent a lot of time on just the highest and the lowest just to see, you know, I wanted like my max range of difference in my shot. I didn't really mess with the middle one too much. Yeah, what I found to be the best was the heaviest trigger setting. And, you know, buddies at work and whatnot, we've been talking about this lately. Pretty much everyone but me shoots a super light trigger. So, you know, take my opinion for what it's worth. But what I really noticed with shooting it super heavy is I can really bury it like into my knuckle here, and just put a lot of like back wall tension against it, to where once I'm, you know, over my, you know, over where I'm gonna let go of the arrow, that I can just pull back and it goes off. When I had super light, it was almost impossible to pull and let off without it like making me jump or me punching the trigger. Like I don't know, I kind of got like a lot of flack on some of the videos I post on YouTube and stuff about like how I shoot and whatnot, because I kind of ripped through the shot. But I've tried I've tried shooting it how calm, cool, and like how a lot of like target archers do and whatnot, and it just does not work for me. So, and then, you know, a lot of people saying that I punch the trigger when I do that, and I get like the video is not super zoomed in or anything, so you can't really see it. My thumb is literally buried around the I guess the button, we'll call it, on the handheld, that my thumb's not bending at all. I approach the thumb button and wrap my thumb around it, and then after that it's all just pulling back. So that's, you know, what works for me. I don't know if it's right or not, but you know, I'm the most consistent I've ever been shooting a bow shooting a bow right now. So not really planning on changing it. But yeah, like if you're a beginner in archery or something, or you just kind of practice every now and then, whatnot, like right before season, I, you know, I really wouldn't recommend anything other than, I mean, try everything and find out what works for you. But like, just from what I've seen, a lot of the videos I've watched, it's next to impossible to get a solid anchor point and that same back wall feeling with an index release. So I would shoot a heavy thumb button, or, you know, if you want to step it up to a hinge or something like that. I wouldn't really use a back tension for a hunting scenario. just so you can get that thing to go off because especially whitetail hunting, stuff happens really fast. I've shot a back tension release and, it's not really, I don't know. I see how it could be effective for some people as a training tool, but it's really not realistic to any shot scenario that I'm ever going to go through. So, yeah, just not really a fan of it. But yeah, like you hear a lot of talk and whatnot about target panic, like it's all over the internet now in the archery, you know, industry and whatnot. I'm going to attribute a lot of that to too light of triggers. My sister actually just got a new bow and whatnot. I was kind of teaching her how to shoot and whatnot, and the guy sold her the Scott. I forget what model it is, but it's like a cheaper Scott index release, and you could probably blow. Excuse me, you could probably blow on that thing, and it would set the trigger off. It's so light, and her being new and whatnot, like that's. I was watching her, standing as far away from, or as far away now as I am from the computer, watching her, and she's like scared of the trigger basically because she knows how light it is. So I set up my release for sorry. I set up my release for her and it was like night and day difference. Like she wasn't jumping or flinching or anything like that. So I don't know. I know the index release is really comfortable because, most people have shot guns and it's pretty much identical concept of that it seems like it's more comfortable, but if you just put in, the tiny amount of work of getting a handheld figured out, you're probably going to be 10 times more consistent. Just my opinion. Yeah, anyways, that's pretty much all I've got for bow and archery updates. Wanted to roll into a little bit of farm deer season updates. So the first thing I want to talk about is food plots. We did a podcast on that beginning of this year. My dad and I did, just kind of talking about our game plan for that moving forward. Kind of had some setbacks on it. Pretty much everything grew. We just had an issue with what we planted reaching its full potential, I guess we'll say. That's due to a combination of things. I'm going to say the number one thing being it's barely rained up there at all this year. My mom sent me a screenshot, I guess, a screen recording video of the radar up there. I don't know if it was either a day or two ago. But there's a big ball of a storm that went right to our town, split around it, and then just kept going. And then same thing, storm coming from the other direction, big ball, split around it, went down. And that's pretty much been, the story of the entire summer up there. It has, maybe rained a couple times. It's the driest I can remember it up there. Whereas, in Troy, it hasn't really rained like a whole lot, but when it does rain, it just flat out pours. So I don't know what's going on up there. I keep asking my parents every day, like, is it raining? Is it raining? And, every storm seems to miss them. So I told them maybe we need to break out the rattles and the headdresses and get a rain dance going because there's clearly something, funky going on. But yeah, the other thing we found out was my dad ended up taking a soil sample and found out that we need a bunch of lime and fertilizer put down. So, looking back now, probably should have done that before starting all this, this big regenerative agriculture project. But, stuff happens and it was new. So, didn't really have a problem with it last year as much as we did this year. So, it's kind of hard to foresee this happening, but it is what it is. So because of the timing and whatnot and the lack of rain, stuff like that, we just had to get some seed in the ground after, because pretty much, the deer have been munching on the buckwheat and sunflowers, basically. Had some corn planted that, a lot of it grew without ears, beans. They started to come up, but then no rain. They just, they ended up, the first batch didn't grow at all. So then my dad had to replant it. And then, yeah, after that, they sprouted and whatnot, but the heat just killed them basically. So um, yeah, we just ended up going back in with the same food plot seed that we've used the last 2 years, which, um, it's kind of the opposite of what we were hoping for. I can pull up the label for it real quick. So yeah, the problem with it is it combines stuff that's not really supposed to be combined together. Yeah, so you really want to keep like your brassicas separate from like pretty much all the other stuff that's in here because they'll outcompete each other, which is kind of what we mentioned in that podcast. But yeah, you got oats, wheat, rye, pea, turnip, rape, and it's about 30% oats, 25% wheat, 25% rye, 14% pea, 2.5% turnip, 2.5% rape. So yeah, like I said, not ideally what we were looking for, but um, it the last 2 years we've killed 3 bucks over it, so not really a big concern using it again. It's worked great in the past. It's just, yeah, like we said, it outcompetes. You'll get one thing growing and not the other. So it is what it is. Lesson learned. But yeah, uh, I believe it putting all the lime down in the time frame, the same time frame that seed was put down, it would end up killing it out. I believe is what my dad said. So that's just something we're gonna have to fix next year. Get that organic matter, a little more regenerative, so we're not tearing up the soil, working it up all the time like we've been in years past, and really trying to avoid stuff like corn and beans that really, deprive the soil of nutrients. So yeah, I personally kind of just want to lean towards like a heavy wildlife food plot blend and maybe like some broadcasted Milo and stuff. The other thing I really want to try and stay away from is Roundup. Just because like there was a study that came out recently. I think the person I saw it from was Joe Rogan. But they sampled like 2,000 or 2,500 people, I think, and 80% of their urine samples had glyphosate in them, which is like the active ingredient Roundup. So yeah, definitely, having bees and whatnot, and um, you know, just you are what you eat. So I don't really want to be herbicide. um, but yeah, that's pretty much all I got for kind of food plot update stuff. We have started watering it too. My dad bought a water pump from Harbor Freight. It's been taking water out there and letting it spray all over the place so this stuff actually grows for this fall. That way we'll actually have deer in it. They don't just eat it all up. Hopefully that'll help it kind of reach its potential. But yeah, that pretty much all I got for the food plot. Next topic I wanted to hit was our hit list or bucks. Um, this is just kind of like hypothetical. They're pretty much just three big steer that have caught my attention on trail camera so far. I'm pretty happy to shoot just about any decent buck. So if you see a video of me shooting a buck that's not one of these, don't be surprised. Or a lesser deer than these, because I'm not dead set on shooting one of these, but these are just the interesting ones that I found. So the first one's the twin 10 buck that we've mentioned before. We've had pictures of him for 3 years now, I think, which is pretty cool. Get this out of the way. Yeah, so this is him. Just a kind of a short time 10 point. And that's pretty much what he's always been. He's just added mass over the years. Call him the Twin 10. If you haven't seen, podcast talking about that. 2 years ago, my dad shot a 2.5-year-old buck that basically was identical to this one. These two were roaming the same parts and stuff, and didn't really realize that we had two of them, I don't think, until after he killed that one. We kept getting pictures of a buck that looked the same as his. Um, so yeah, whether they're related or not, who knows? But their genetics, the way their antlers grew, were almost identical, and they're about the same. Or they are the same age, I know, because he's 4-year-old deer now. So that's kind of mature age for where we're hunting. If you get a deer to 4, that's a pretty good buck. So I know my dad really wants to kill him, but every picture we had of him is standing right in front of my stand. So we'll see how that works out. And then another buck we got, we're calling him Hightower, just because you can see he's got a really tall rack. Pretty sure Hightower's from Police Academy is where I got the name from. Just popped in my head when I saw his rack. So same thing with him. He's just been right in front of my stand. And he's mostly been there at night, whereas the Twin 10 was day and night. And then the last buck we got is one we're calling the Sheriff. And the reason for that is because he's patrolling pretty much the entire farm. He is on pretty much every camera at all hours of the day. Some days he's checking in every 3 hours. He's really just kind of a homebody to the farm, which is pretty neat. Looked like he was just going to be a wide 8-point, but as you can see, he got a little split off the end on that left side. So I guess he's a 9-point. But yeah, he's the other cool part about why we call him the Sheriff, not only just because he's patrolling, the entire perimeter, but he's always pushing all the other deer around, bucks, does, I mean, you name it. I believe I posted it on YouTube and Instagram, but there's a video of a buck. There's one buck bedded by the mock scrape tree that we have on. We've got that other cuddy back on. Younger buck just bedded down there, and Sheriff just, sways over there with his attitude, makes him get up out of the bed. So, I mean, that's real common for him. He's kind of just a bully to all the other deer. So I'm most hopeful for him right now, just because, I mean, honestly, he's probably one of the most consistent deer we've had in the past, 3 or 4 years. So hopefully, he sticks around for bow season. We get a lot of pictures, a lot of buck pictures and stuff, and a lot of buck activity in the early season, kind of before, while the bucks are all still grouped up and before they start hitting that timber for the rut. So, hopefully those bucks will be around, but we'll kind of just see how it goes. One other thing I wanted to mention too, just talking about cameras and stuff. End up getting, I believe it's called the Hunt Hard. It's either Hunt Hard or Hunt Easy, but muddy camera arm. I got that set up in my stand, so I'm gonna be taking my girlfriend's Canon out there, and I should be getting a lot better video quality and stuff this year, filming my hunts. So that's pretty much all I watch on TV is hunting films. So if you're into that, hopefully I can make something that's pretty entertaining for you, and hopefully I find some success this year. But the last thing I wanted to talk about, because I've seen a lot of buzz on the internet recently about it, is shot placement on deer. And I got a diagram that I'm going to pull up, just kind of give a visual. I think there's a big misconception on what the shoulder is for a deer. So I don't know if you can see my cursor, but what we're typically told is, aim right behind the shoulder. It's what most rifle hunters hear, which most people consider to be the back side of the leg straight up, I guess is how I would describe it, if you're just listening. So if you look at this diagram, you're barely clipping the back edge of the heart when you shoot there. Basically getting the back end of the lungs is most probable where you're going to hit, possibly liver, depending on how far off what you think is the shoulder you're shooting. So yeah, as you can actually see, there's a knuckle right below that arm, or I guess right next to that armpit. So you don't want to aim too low, but if you aim just, right above the center of the leg, that's where you're disconnecting the heart at. That shoulder bone actually runs forward. That's what you hear. I believe they call it the golden triangle or the vital V. Just right where that points forward. If you're inside of that, yeah, that's pretty much your money shot. You don't want to be too far forward, and you don't want to be too low because then you're hitting bone. But I feel like that's something that I don't know if it's just because no one's ever really paid attention to the anatomy. My dad and I were talking about this. Just like I asked him like where he likes to aim, um, and why, and he still aims kind of on that back, above the armpit, just to give him a little bit of forgiveness each way because that's kind of the middle. But if you're a good shot, got him at 20 yards, and don't really want to take that chance, if you can make that shot right on the heart, that's probably gonna be your best bet. Especially, I've seen a lot too from watching shows recently that, from an elevated position, and whatnot. If you're shooting for lungs, a lot of time you just get one lung, and the deer can either go a really long ways on one lung and not let out a lot of blood, or they can completely survive on it. I heard a biologist talking about, that lung will basically just collapse and disintegrate, and the deer will just live on it for as long as it can. So yeah, just something to consider. Take in mind your setup, your accuracy, and just how you shoot, what you're comfortable with. If you're shooting from a ground blind or a tree stand, whatnot. Just be mindful of where you're aiming, and if you weren't really aware of this, just most of us don't really get to see how the organs lay out in a deer, a lot of the time. So I think this diagram is really helpful, and I'm kind of glad I've been seeing the talk floating around on the internet and stuff lately, just so we can be a lot more ethical and finding these deer that we're shooting. So just something to take in consideration. Um, that's really all I got for this one. I'm really looking forward to the season. We got about a week until it kicks off, and I'm going to be hunting opening day, and I'm pretty much be hunting every day that I can. I love being out there, and I've been training super hard for it. Shoot my bow every day, tweaking and tuning, and been help my dad out up the farm, various projects up there to get everything situated. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I hope we find success this year, and yeah, hopefully I can post some content and stuff that's entertaining, provide some value to you all. And if you have any success or stories and whatnot, be sure to reach out to me. I can talk hunting and the outdoors all day, so I'd love to hear it. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got for this one. Thanks for tuning in.